Hello, everybody, and welcome back to another episode of We Bought a Mic, a podcast about innies and outies, baby goats, and cold hob. Hob. Is that how she says it?
Hob.
Cold hob. Welcome. My name's Ernest.
When I was a newborn, my penis was Severance. My name is Hunter.
And
I'm calling circumcision Severance when my pee-pee got Severanced.
Joining us from Lumon HQ, from deep in the bunker, it's Drew. Hey, how's it going in there? You're in a little box.
I'm actually over here. I'm Drew D, and I don't know who you guys are.
No, well, you know us, but you know us as like French horn number 3. So that's the only thing you know us from.
Yeah, they've got me doing marching band stuff like 18 hours a day. I don't know what the fuck this job is.
I get home, my calves are on fire.
I have blisters. I think I'm on the drum line.
This podcast is mysterious and important. We're talking about Severance Season 2. All episodes now streaming on the Apple TV Plus internet television service. I guess we're going to do a big deep dive, but before we do that, we should maybe give some non-spoiler thoughts as we did with Season 1.
Yeah.
But I don't know how much non-spoiler stuff we can say, because this is one of those shows where, like, you can't just jump in. You got to do the work. You got to clock in to Lumon to know what's going on here.
I think that's true. So this is an interesting show because I can't talk about just overall how I feel about it
without the plot details. Yeah. Okay.
So I think that Severance is, on one hand, I love this show. I think that I really enjoy a lot of the things that it does. Yet on the same hand, I have listened to and read a lot of negative criticism about the show. And
specifically
I find myself,
Season 2?
Yeah. And I feel like I agree with a lot of the negative criticism of this show, because I do think that this is a show that I love and has some really, really glaring aspects to it that are fundamental flaws of the show and that do not work. Mainly that I think that's when the show is about the people and about the cast and is about being a little bit kooky, a little bit zany, I think this is one of the best shows on television.
The vibes are right.
When it goes a little bit too much into the puzzle box aspect of like what's inside the box is actually another box.
Explaining the mystery.
I don't care. I truly I don't think that the show really, and I think one of the reasons is I don't think the show knows what those answers are. So I'm like, why are we even going down that avenue then? But I, with some reservations, I think this is still one of the best shows on television.
Drew, what about you? Do you agree?
Yeah, I agree. I think it's one of those things where shows like this almost kind of oh, hey, buddy. we got a cat alert here.
They keep cats down there?
Is that part of the waffle party?
Are they gonna have to like sacrifice him like with the Anton Chigurh gun or like what?
Yeah, no, I'm on like the cafeteria team and I am cooking him.
Oh, okay, got it.
I think shows like this invite a ton of criticism because they are very clearly trying to do a lot, as opposed to shows that, have a way smaller scope and are doing, like narrowed down and doing that thing really well. This is a show that's saying, hey, we're not fucking around. Like, we're really trying to do this. We're going big. We're going genre, concept, performance, mixing it all together. So that sort of just invites, you know what I mean? That invites everyone to criticize, because if you're going balls out, you're going balls out. I don't think it deserves as much criticism as it has gotten for Season 2, even though, like you said, Hunter, I agree for the most part. Season 2, I don't think is as good as Season 1. I don't think it had a shot to be unless this show was about to become the best show on TV.
Yeah.
And I think a lot of disappointment in season 2 might come from that perspective with people, people who wanted this show to be the show. And for a lot of people, it is the show. It's a really solid, like, week to week experience, really rarely a flop. You get mystery upon mystery upon mystery, but you also a lot of the time don't need to be fixated on that, because the show's giving you a lot elsewhere to focus on. They're giving you aesthetic that works in every episode. They're giving you performances that are just like through the roof. So I'm really happy with what I got in season 2. I didn't think from the jump that it had a chance to be as good as season 1, and I think that they did a pretty noble job, especially considering A, it's been 3 years, B, there was a lot of creative tumult behind the scenes between seasons 1 and 2. Speaking toward who has power here, because Ben Stiller, I believe, like, bought the script from Dan Erickson, who created the show, continues to, like, basically, be co-head writer. And I don't think Ben Stiller counted on being as involved as he has maintained, but he essentially has become showrunner. He's directing all these episodes. He's writing all these episodes. And it's to the point that, like, even now in between seasons 2 and 3, we'll get to it, but there's like almost like 90% turnover in, like, the behind the scenes crew making the show. So with all, you would expect, like, disastrous results, and instead you got a really good season of TV.
Well, Stiller in season 1 directed all but 3 episodes, which he let someone named Ophi McCardle. I always forget how to pronounce that person's name. Season 2, he directs about half the season, including the finale. And he lets a lot of other people come in here. Sam Donovan, Uda Brisevowicz, Jessica Lee Gagne, who kind of comes in hot with one of the best directed episodes of the season. She's
Chikai Bardo, the show's cinematographer, before that. So she came in and rocked it. But it's interesting because, like, administratively, there were multiple showrunners, and it's very, very clear that Stiller, if he's not a showrunner, then what the fuck is he? Because he's calling the shots from a pre-production writing standpoint, and then he's calling shots from a production standpoint.
Well, we'll never know,
but that rubbed people the wrong way. But we should talk about the show.
I think that, to the point about kind of that turmoil behind the scenes, I actually think that plays a lot into some of the issues that I have with season 2, just from like a whole overarching season of television perspective, because everybody said, like, we know where, like, the broad strokes of what we want these characters to do. And for me, at least, what I found is season 2 proved, the broad strokes of where you want Mark, Gemma, and Helly to be. And I think for everybody else, it's kind of like, all right, let's kind of go in a holding pattern here, and we'll figure something out here. We're going to, like, put John Turturro over here because also another behind the scenes thing. We don't know if he's coming back for a 3rd season. Zach Cherry, I guess we'll give you something more to do, but nothing too crazy that's going to take you out of the show. Like, it's a lot of, like, we don't really know what to do with these characters. Case in point, Miss Cobell, which we're going to have to dive more into Patty Arquette and what that character is. But I think it's a little bit of like we know where we want the show to end up as far as an arc for these 3 characters, and what it is, this idea of nature versus nurture, of love, both new, exciting, young love, and something like whenever you have been through the trenches, you've been married for years, you've been through traumas together, how those dynamics can work. I think that they have nailed down.
Yeah, the human stuff.
They have. A lot of the other lore stuff and the character stuff seems like we'll figure it out on the fly. And I think that some of it does work, some of it does sing, and others don't really work. But I'm glad that you mentioned the aesthetic of the show, because I think that's one thing that, like, even whenever it's struggling, it looks, as far as the narrative goes, my eyes are still staying glued to what's happening, because it is compelling just in the way that it is shot. It is some of the most the best iconography that I can remember in a television show in a really long time, where it's like, oh, this like hallway I'm going down is like giving Severance right now. And like what that even means is kind of evolved over
it's iconic.
This whole season.
They managed to land on something that is like very recognizable and iconic. So I'm sitting here from a very interesting sort of vantage point, because there was a point in maybe the middle of the season where I really felt like it was kind of going to be a disappointment. And just looking back at the episode count, we don't get Ortbo until 4.
Yep.
Right. So that's kind of like the moment where you do feel a little bit of a jolt. My favorite episode of the season, finale aside, which I want to unpack just the finale, because I'll get to my thoughts on that in a second. But Attila, the 6th episode, it was kind of my personal favorite, because that's the one where you do kind of set aside pretty much all the lore stuff, and you just focus on what this sci-fi premise does for these people from a human point of view and from a relationship point of view, which I found really, really fascinating. But there was a point sort of in the middle here where I felt like, what's going on here? Like, what are we doing here? Even an episode like Ja'Kai Bardo, I think from a visual standpoint is undeniable, but from a storytelling perspective, I felt like it didn't quite give me everything that I wanted. So I was very conflicted as the season was going on, but the finale was so incredible. I was so pleased in almost every way by the finale that I almost have done like a full turnaround on my take on this season. And I'm way higher on it now, a post finale than I thought I was going to be in the middle.
Yeah.
Because yes, I really can't argue with you guys the points that you're making about it not being as good as the first season. Because when you're kind of digging into the weeds and looking at every single episode, like, there's some very low lows here. There's some really inconsistent stuff. There's a lot of frustrating, just trudging through plot extremely slowly, and a lot of character positioning that like doesn't really make sense, and we're sort of going into trying to explain the lore of Lumon or setting things up that we don't know quite how they're going to pay off. But what I ended up doing here was that I actually watched this season almost entirely twice, because Lee, my wife, caught up in the middle of it. So I had watched ahead without her, because she hadn't watched the first season, so I wasn't going to wait around. So I started without her, and then I was also watching season 1 with her concurrently. So I actually did a full season 1 rewatch in the middle of this, and I was kind of jumping back and forth. Really crazy experience to like watch an episode deep into season 2 and then go back and watch season 1. But then it all caught up. The timelines converged. Having done a full season 1 rewatch, then going back and rewatching the first couple episodes of season 2. And then as we got to this final stretch of episodes, I was really pleased with where we ended up. And as we unpack and as we sort of poke holes in it, I'm not going to really defend a lot of the complaints, because I frankly like kind of agree with a lot of them. And I was very frustrated with where this show was going in terms of the decisions it was making and what it wanted to focus on, and how it chose to reveal the mysteries.
Let me, I think I have like an overarching explanation as to like what happened here in season 2. Because I agree. I'm a huge fan of the finale. Not everyone's like over the moon with it. I really was. I thought it delivered. It gave me what I wanted. What's going on is I think the writing team, which is, led by Stiller and Erickson, they knew where they needed to start. And so episode 1 is dedicated to getting us to that starting point, basically. They have to do like pretzels, like crazy gymnastics just to get everyone back in that fucking building. which was what everyone was wondering for multiple years now. Is like, how the fuck is everyone going to end up back in the Severance building? And if they're not back in there, how's it going to be any good?
Yeah, what's the show if they're not in there?
Right.
So they know where they want to start. They know where they want to end. The problem is not everyone can be treated as a puzzle piece just to get where you need them with the ending, because in season 2 they want to flesh out and explore the full cast. They don't just want to zero in on Mark, and Helly and his plight and his outside life. There, like season 1 is a lot more, I'd say, laser focused on that. It sort of it reminds me of what happens with a lot of shows in sitcoms, a lot of the time, even like The Office US. After a few seasons of like zeroing in on like the main cast, like they kind of get bored and they're like, oh, let's do like a Kevin episode. And it's like, let's not, because with shows like that, those are actors who are like well cast, but cast for a small role on like a budget sitcom. And so there might not be enough juice there, to be honest. You know what I mean? For like a Meredith episode. This show has such a strong cast that you really can give everyone work here. You know what I mean?
Let's go see what Walken is up to.
Yeah, exactly. Like Turturro's not like a fledgling character. He's not an afterthought casting wise. Tramel Tillman, Britt Lauer, Zach Cherry, Merritt Weaver, even Dylan's wife is awesome.
A lot of good stuff
Incredible.
from her.
Jen Tulloch as Devin, his Mark's sister, is, I think,
she gets a lot
phenomenal.
Yeah.
So you want to, explore what's possible with those actors, because they have the juice. It's not like The Office situation where like, hey, let's just zero in. But the side effect of that is things get kind of disorganized, and you can't give everyone the arc they deserve, because you're also trying to do all this plot. So that's what the show was struggling to juggle, I think, because they had a lot of like mechanical, they had a lot of like road building to do, but at the same time they were trying to like take the scenic route. That said, that's fucking hard. Like I can't name many shows that do an amazing job at juggling both when they're this heady. It's a hard thing to do. But
yeah, it's not a home run, but
that's kind of the thing, is that I do feel myself trying to fight the urge to be hypercritical of this show. Like, I don't want to do for this like I did to another sci-fi show that came out in the last few years, something like Devs, where I think that Devs has this incredible idea and it really kind of loses itself in what made it special towards the beginning as we get later through that one season. I still think that even in the points where it stumbles, like this show still has these moments of brilliance. And I almost think that that's more frustrating in a way, that like you don't just have like the Westworld thing where you're just like, I'm out. Like they've lost me.
This is a 10 at times.
It is.
Yeah.
It reaches that point. And I think that the finale is a 10 at times.
It really is. But does it wash away? Because I kind of feel like it does wash away a lot of the stuff. So you kind of feel similar?
I think in some ways it does, and in some ways it doesn't. And what I mean by that is, and I kind of group episode 9 and episode 10 together, mostly because of like the Turturro send off. Who knows?
Yeah.
I think there's a lot of things that are just like, we don't really know what's going to happen with this character. So like, Zach Cherry, we're just going to have like a whole thing where Dylan, your Audie's going to have a moment where he's like, I like keeping you around and therefore I'm not going to kill you.
You're going to cuck yourself.
Yeah. Like you're just kind of going to exist over here. And that's what I mean. Like the core 3, I know what's happening with those characters and where they're, or I don't know, but I feel confident in what is happening with them and what their dynamic is. I don't know if the show really knows what Lumon is yet, what everybody else was working on while Mark was mining Gemma's data. I don't think that stuff really matters, to be honest. But I think where the show can frustrate me at points is whenever we devote excess amount of time to that puzzle box aspect, and it feels utterly hollow. And I'm specifically talking about the Cobell episode where they try to assign more religiosity to whatever this organization is. Whatever is happening right there, I think part of it is the performance and the writing around the Cobell character. I'm sorry, Ernest. I'm not trying to insult your girl, Patty Arquette. I think that she is worthy
It was a rough season for her.
I think she's worthy of better than this, than being in like, I don't know, like aside from that one episode, like 5 scenes in the entire season. I don't know what was happening.
Here's one thought. Okay. I think that it's not going to seem as disjointed for people who watch it all, like binge the entire thing. The problem is we haven't really hung out with Cobell in like 3 years. And then all of a sudden in episode 8, they're like, hey, remember her?
Well, I see. And I don't even necessarily I think that I wouldn't mind if it was interesting what Lumon is and what the source material is. But I don't think that any of that stuff, I think that where the show is good is season 1, you see a goat in the Lumon office and you're like, that's fucking weird. I don't know what's up with that, but like that almost feels par for the course for wherever happening. That feels the same energy as, we also have a marching band that's going to come up and play a celebration that you're having. Like, that's what I want. I don't want the explaining, like the show is cinema sensing itself, and I don't want that. Like, I don't want to go have like the Reddit boardification of the show. I don't think that that is what Ben Stiller is interested in. That might be what Dan Erickson's interested in. To be honest, I don't really know. I have listened to some interviews with the guys, which I do think are like pretty insightful for some of his messaging.
The official Severance pod is very interesting.
I think
I haven't.
That's good. In. I think I was just listening to it on the way of doing this podcast now, but he actually did an interview with the Prestige TV, the Ringer podcast.
They've been doing
that is pretty interesting. There's a lot of that, but this is one of the reasons I don't want to have a show that has homework to it in order to like enjoy or appreciate a show. And I think that some of the lore parts of Severance almost invite that. And I think that the human elements do not. I think the human elements, it's right there. You feel the emotion in the show. That's the same reason why the Gemma episode is, for me, far and away, Chica Bardo is the best episode of the season. I think that is like a phenomenal piece of television filmmaking.
It looks insane.
And speaking of a character who we haven't spent much time with, real life Gemma, aside from one moment earlier in the season, like we get nothing from her. This is just purely introducing her. And like, we know sad boy Mark, so we can assume how he got there, but it is fully a flashback episode that feels so fresh and that draws you in and that makes you feel, that makes you care for this character. That is where the show sings. That is where it like really is honing in on something, even something like the Ortbo. We're spending time with the characters, and there's some other weird shit that's happening and everything. Woe's hollow. But it's just about seeing these 4 characters together. And that's what I want the show to hold on to.
So I agree, but even like those episodes are also giving you a lot on the other side. It's just not just that. You know what I mean? Like the Orpo has a ton of shit going on. The Chikai Bardo is just like, it's like sensory overload the whole time because like Jessica, I think her name is Jessica Lee
Gagne.
She's cooking the absolute shit out of that episode. It's wildly, like, it's frenetic and edited. The time jumps, the flashbacks, like it's absolutely
the transitions from scene to scene.
You're also intermittently learning a ton of like lore of like what is going on there. So it kind of gives you both when it's at its best. There are just sometimes where it feels like it's only giving you one thing. And so, by comparison, that's worse. I'm an Orbo head. You guys know this.
That's your pick for the season? That's your favorite?
I don't know. I just like it. I just love the Orbo. And what's funny is I wanted to, like, after watching it, I wanted to be like, well, yeah, of course, like this whole corporation is so stupid. It's being run by like these, just like these old, insane, like possible like AI freaks. Of course they would think that Orpo is a good idea. And then it turns out that Mr. Milchick really thought the Orko was a good idea.
I do. We're all taking a trip to an undisclosed
doing an
mountain
Orpo.
in a couple months. What if we just see like 3 podcasters waving at us from like a rival mountain across the way?
It rocked.
This is your last chance. If for some reason you're listening to this without watching the full season, like, go away now, because we're really going to dig into it here.
So speaking toward like, the puzzle box and the focusing too much on the mysteries and the Redditification, the beginning of the season is the overshadowing question that is, basically confirmed by like the Reddit freaks is Helly Helena or not? That was a big deal the first 4 episodes.
Mm-hmm.
I wasn't watching like with that lens ep 1, and so I did not see it, and I didn't really think much of it. And then like I think Danny was in the chat because he's watching all
he's
all
Reddit
these,
pilled,
crazy
Shout
like
out.
clue videos and stuff. And it like there was one post that just like I was like, oh yeah, okay, beyond a shadow of a doubt, like because like it wants to lay out clues, it wants to give you text, like even if there's like crazy literary references all throughout like the show, like so if you want to fucking be a freak about it, you can. But also like I wasn't watching F1 through the lens of trying to figure out Helly, and I was still enjoying it. That said, if that remained a question throughout the entire season, we would have had a problem, because when Helena is pretending to be Helly, she is a very boring character. She's not really giving much of anything. She's just being like, Mark, yeah, I like you, and like, oh, I'm like a tough girl or whatever. Like, you know what I mean? She's like a shadow of herself. And so it was getting tiresome.
Mm-hmm.
The performance is exceptional from Britt Lauer.
Yeah, Britt Lauer's like on fire.
I think she puts up heavy numbers in this season. And the Orpo episode is the one where it is fully revealed when Tortura, when Irving is like forcing Milkshake to switch her back to Helly R. And that is meant to be sort of the major reveal moment when all the characters in the story are finding out. But there's plenty of seeds before then, even earlier in the episode, and even before then too. There are sort of tells, and I think that the show has a hard time deciding how much it wants to lean into the seismic sort of hit of a reveal.
Mm-hmm.
And that's something that I struggled with, because there are these other moments, that one that really sticks out like a sore thumb in Chikai Bardo, when we get this reveal of the refiners being refined, when we get sort of the other macro data refiners who are watching our MDR team.
I wanted to talk about that.
And they're like, oh, the walls of Severance are holding. And that, to me, I just could not help but roll my eyes, because
what does that mean?
I'm just like,
nonsense.
I'm just like, what are we getting out of this? Because obviously there are like the Reddit heads out there who are trying to do all the theories of, is it cloning? Did the EMT wife plant a clone? Like, there are just layers and layers and layers of theorizing that, frankly, I'm not interested in at all.
I don't watch television for that, man. I get like everybody watches TV for different things. So if you are that person, like no like judgment against you or something like that. But that's not the way that I like to watch things.
I just want Mark S and Helly R to be horny and fuck under a tent.
I want Mark
plastic.
to have like a really fucked up 3-way.
Yeah,
where like half of his body is in the door and the other half is out.
Like I wasn't really like, I never really benefited from like, like getting one of those reveals spoiled by like Reddit or Danny. You listen, Danny?
Danny, wake up.
Like that never really benefited my watching experience. What like the supplementary stuff I did enjoy would be like, for example, the Ringer pod with Juliana Robinson and Rob Mahoney was a really great listen, because they would dive deep into like reference material. They would, you know what I mean? They would be like, hey, this song from the episode, here's like a history of that song's use in cinema, and it really points toward exactly why they used it. Like there's layers if you want to find it. But that also doesn't affect the plot. You know what I mean? Like, that's fun to me. But so that reveal in particular, Ernest, that there are refiners watching them. That's the type of thing where, like, that's the only thing that bothered me, I think, about Chikai Bardo, which is such an incredible episode. Because if you let yourself get hung up on stuff like that, then you start thinking and you're like, that doesn't make any sense. And you don't want to cinema sins. You don't want to be like, oh, logistically. But okay, so there's a whole team, like 4 with plus manager, like 5 people whose job it is to watch these people do their jobs. And no one is going up the ladder this entire season saying, hey, they're never at their desks. They're never doing the job. There's no communication.
Well, I mean, that also leads to the whole thing of like, what the fuck are the other 3 people doing? Are they also mining Gemma's emotions? Are they mining another person who's down there? It
makes no sense.
Like, it's nonsense. And that's what I mean about, like, I don't know if the show knows the answer or cares about the answer.
It's about the feeling. It's just arriving at that emotion of, you thought your wife was dead. You went into this building to try to forget about this life that you had with her so you could feel whole again. And then you realize that's what the whole entire first season is building towards. She's alive. Yeah. Boom. And 3 years later, how are we going to pick up? And the entire buildup of season 2 is trying to figure out how we're going to get her out. And that is what we care about. And they try to layer on all these other mysteries that, frankly, like, are just so inconsequential. Like, finding out that Cobell invented Severance is like, I don't care.
No, my whole reaction to that was like, cool, I guess.
What is the point of finding that out?
I actually and I don't, that's been the general reception to that episode, and I don't think that was the point of the episode. But it reads that way because the episode doesn't give you anything else of substance. You know what I mean? I think they wanted it to be just like a sort of like character-y, like a development pit stop, where you just find out more about someone. I don't think they wanted to be like, you guys aren't going to believe who invented Severance. But that's how it's presented because the episode just kind of stinks. It's kind of a flop. I think that's kind of what happens when the show goes wrong. Like I mentioned this like at the time when we were talking about it, but if you're going to, do a sort of, a character reveal where you learn about someone's history and their past, go balls out, like use budget on it. This felt like a budgetless episode. Like, cast Patty Arquette as a child and show me her life. You know what I mean? Like I hate to like comp to just like true greatness, but like Station 11 would make a fucking meal out of an episode like this. They would get an Emmy for an episode like this. They would introduce you to someone you barely know and make you weep by the end of the episode. They could have done that. And that's the one gear that the show still doesn't quite have. The closest you get is something like Chikai Bardo, where you do, it's a lot more emotionally based, but it's throwing so much at you that like you don't have a ton of time to like sit in the emotions, even when you do have them.
Yeah, no, I think that is really apt. I think, again, also not trying to dunk on Patty Arquette here, but part of the problem too is her performance, and that is her like, I made this, these are my blueprints. That is she thinks that is the big reveal of the episode, whether we are actually supposed to think that it is.
That's a good point.
I don't know, but again, going back to like, I don't really know if the show knows the lore. Even something like reintegration, which is something that's obviously comes up big in season 1 with the PD character. It's coming back here again. So the Ragabi character, her whole thing is like, I'm going to help you reintegrate. I have like this black market thing.
Truly bad.
So she like does it. She half does a reintegration. It doesn't go well. And then she's just gone. We phone up Cobell, she comes back and we just never see Ragabi again. That's the kind of thing where I'm like, do we not have like an outline for like what this, not even from season 1 to like throughout the whole show, but like, do we not have an outline episode to episode for this character? Like, what the fuck was the point of her? Like, I don't understand the point of this character.
Exactly. It goes back farther than that because the way I was really upset at the time. Like I was just earlier, I was going back through like our chat logs in our Discord. And I was upset like when the episode dropped where Mark decided to resever because it is so out of nowhere and it's not treated seriously at all. It's not treated like an important plot point. You know why it's not? Because it ends up not being an important
It literally doesn't matter. It's nothing.
But at the time you're like she pops up out of absolutely fucking nowhere. Literally, she pops out in front of his car and she's like, "You want Sever?" And and he's like, "Yeah, you know what? Fuck it, let's do it." And you're like, "Wait, what?" That's like the biggest choice that he's made in this entire show so far, and it's an afterthought. Now, the way that she ends up getting treated, and I don't know, there's plenty of people to pin this on. I have a personal theory based on kind of what they said on the Severance pod as well, but Karen Aldridge is the actress who plays Ragabi. So many of her scenes reek of reshoots or just missing entire takes that were
absolutely
shot.
Yep.
The way they talk about her is that she is flying off the handle as an actress and giving you something different every take. I would imagine that is the exact opposite of how Ben Stiller shoots. He is exacting as a director. He shoots over and over and over. He's so precise. I would bet you anything, particularly the episode where Devin is trying to get info out of Ragabi, and then Ragabi's like, you know what? I'm leaving.
Well, that's Chikai. That's in Chikai Bardo. That stunk of reshoots.
Yeah.
She's calling Cobell, and then she just leaves.
I want to call Cobell, which doesn't make sense in its own right for her. I
forgot that was in that episode. Yeah.
And then Ragabi's just like, if you're doing that, I'm gonna leave. And then she leaves.
And then she's just gone.
And then you never see her again.
No, she's just gone. She's just there one episode and one scene, and then she's gone the next.
Patty Arquette has to come in.
I think that even a scene or two that may have been lost would have provided some context there. But generally, also like from a writing standpoint, the resevered thing was just a mistake. I think this happens a lot where there's like a vestigial appendage of like a plot line that they wanted to use more, but then kind of, things just didn't end up going that way. But they're like, well, we're on this path to episode 10 and like we have the resevered stuff. It doesn't have to be the main thing because we're going to throw it out. So we'll keep it in there.
It goes back to like where the show, whenever you are making a television show, you're making a movie or anything in life, you're only going to have a limited number of resources of like, these are the actors that I have. This is the amount of runtime that I have. What am I going to do with this space? And I feel like the biggest criticism of the show is that it has all the tools. It has all the 5-star recruits that are here, that everything that you could ask for. And a lot of times it doesn't really know how to deploy those resources. Like, I think, and this isn't to just like relegate them to only having one episode together, but there is so much more meat on the bone of like, let's do a standoff episode that's just with Dylan and his wife, like both Innie and Audi, and just have a whole episode that's really diving into that instead of like, we get little like 6-minute flashes of them in episode to episode over like a 3 or 4 episode arc. And it can kind of, even if it's good, disjoint the momentum that each single episode has. It just doesn't feel like the best way to take advantage of the time that you have.
Yeah. And Dylan as a character doesn't really get to that much of a more different place.
He's kind of in the same. I think that it's something where it's like, after season 1, he was such a revelation as an actor of like, oh, this guy is great. We need to give him something more to do. But then they were like, what if he meets his Audi wife? ... And then they just kind of like didn't really figure out what else to do.
There's a lot of good stuff in there that I thought the scene where he tries to apply for a new job at the chair factory.
Yeah.
I thought that was really great.
That's awesome. And that's a great example of the show, like taking, like while developing a character, also taking a lot of time to be very funny. Because that whole sequence, it's sad, but it's played for comedy. Like, it's fucking hilarious. The guy opposite him is identical to him.
Yeah.
And they're like absolutely vibing about doors.
Until he finds out he's severed. We get a little peek
doors is great.
at how, I mean, what kind of door would you be?
Yeah.
You know? Would you be a saloon door?
I'd be more of a French door, I think.
French door?
Yeah.
Yeah. I would be like the kind of door that you can what is it that swings both ways? It's like a saloon door, but it takes up the entire.
Are you talking about some like brutalish shit of like the doors that just like you're thinking like function?
I would have a little window,
Okay.
you know, small one. Drew, what kind of door would you be?
Hanging beads. Thanks for asking.
Oh, nice.
That's a great.
That's
door.
fucking chill, dude. Speaking of characters, we made it this far without talking about Tramel Tillman as Milchick. And that is one of the big wins of this season is like we're letting Milchick cook. In many of these episodes or many
He's
of these
leveled up. He got
we're
promoted.
letting him cook. We really exploring again like some of the beautiful tidbits that are in the show. The like micro racial aggressions of the Egan of everything of like, what if we made this Egan guy, what if we made like put you as like a black man in this Egan photo? And like all of these little microaggressions and things like that are happening. The way that he talks is expert.
Yeah.
Like I think that is just the stuff where it's like
grow.
Yeah. Tramel Tillman is absolutely incredible. And that is like one of the true, if we're like separating the big, the Mark and Helly, that is the big character to take out of this show.
Guess what we'll see him in next? The Final Reckoning.
Oh, let's fucking go.
I have no idea how big his role is, but he is in the film.
Hey.
Unless McHugh.
I thought you were going to say he was going to be in the new A24 film, Marvel's Thunderbolts.
Oh, no.
Okay.
Unless McHugh decides to cut him out, which please don't. McHugh, if you're watching, keep Tramel's part in.
I'm really happy for him. He's a really sweet guy. He went on the Severance, their podcast, and he has a really interesting journey to becoming an actor. Like he fully had a different career. You know what I mean? He's way newer for someone who, who's like in his 30s or 40s. But he's so riveting. He's very captivating. He gets a lot to do this season. Although, where he ends up, I wasn't very happy with. That said,
I mean,
we'll get into the
marching band.
Well, I'm of the opinion that I think that with everything moving the way it was, they had to pick a point to end the episode, the season, and I think they ended it right before he has a very important turn.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. I think that's
all these characters are headed. I mean, we got the Cobell turn. That's happening. They're headed for a revolution. I mean, this is a story about rising up against your capitalist overlords. This is a story about a full-on communist takeover, seizing the means of production by the proletariat.
Fucking animal. They read Animal Farm.
Yeah, like that's what this is about. It's made by Apple, which is crazy.
They read the UUR.
Yeah. Wait. Hey. Also,
seize the means of production.
Where the fuck was Rickon throughout this whole season?
Rickon?
Dude, get my boy Rickon back in there. Everybody wants more Rickon.
Wasn't he working on like an any version of the UUR? Lumon was going to contract him.
He was busy making the Brutalist.
Yo, it's Brady. Brady does kind of look like
they look like the same guy.
So, I mean, yeah, there's a lot here. We focused a lot on the Knox, but I think that there's a lot here throughout that really, really works. And I feel like this show is poking at these ideas that are really, really interesting, that maybe they don't blossom fully, like the potential isn't completely realized, but I feel like we're so lucky to get an original sci-fi story that goes for these themes and that really likes to stew in these ideas of like, how do we cope with our grief and our standing in the world, and how do we move forward, and how do we try to tell ourselves that like we are worth it, that we deserve the best for ourselves. And to layer on like multiple identities on top of that is really, really fascinating to think like, oh, not only do you deserve the best for yourself, but what if you had another aspect of yourself that also deserves the best? That I think is fascinating. And then again, to shout out my favorite episode of the season, Attila, that's the one where you start to really get into the nitty gritty of how these alternate versions start to fall in love with each other and start to feel like they deserve love and they deserve the best, and that they have genuine human connections with each other. I mean, that is some of the best stuff. And I think that going back to the point that you were making with Milkshake, to have him not be severed, I think is a really interesting sort of juxtaposition as to what our main characters are going through, because he's watching this entire situation from an omniscient point of view where he's not severed, but he is having a similar conflict in his perspective where he does see all of it, but there are sort of two sides to him, because Severance is this extreme extrapolation of slavery. It's you are forcing your Annie to have an existence of just work without any type of benefit or compensation. And I don't think they ever say the word slavery ever once in this entire show, but I am very curious in a potential season 3, how that, if any way, might inform sort of like a breakage away from Lumon for the Milkshake character.
Yeah, they were setting it up all season, and I hope next season they kind of take the kid gloves off with it, because it was just, I mean, it was done very well, but a lot of it was just like in the implication throughout the season. You know what I mean? They give him like racially adjusted portraits of Egan's. He's made deeply uncomfortable. They go after him for his vocabulary, which, we're led to assume he had sort of crafted this sanitized version of himself to appease like his,
it's code switching
overlords. So there's a lot of that going on.
There's the other character, Natalie, I think her name is, who is like biracial.
Yeah, where he's he tries
who
to,
is
like,
the
vibe
voice
with her.
of the board. Yeah.
Yeah, he tries to vibe it out with her, and she's like, "No, we're not doing that." Sorry,
I really like his character. I love the moments that we get of his character where he is not just the boss over the severed floor, though, because it shows, I don't know, there's something about it that throughout the season, I really loved every time that he interacts with his bosses, not just for like the wider cultural things that you guys are both touching on, but it almost like puts a magnifying glass on how we're all like, whether we choose to actually undergo a procedure or not, are all like a little bit severed just by like living in the workplace.
Dude, in 2025 America,
every single day it's just like, cool, I can just go to work and I can just escape and I can just clock in, I can do my thing, I can build my little, I can move my scary numbers around and not have to think about it, and then I can go home, I can deal with life later.
Absolutely.
Like, it is a distraction for you.
I think that's part of
that's why it's good to have these non-severed characters in a show like this.
Part of the reason why this show is hitting in the way it's hitting, and I think it's probably the most successful show Apple has had. I think
Ted Lasso.
I think it might, at this point, might be bigger than Ted Lasso. It's because of that. It's bigger
because of the social media of it all, the game theorying.
But it's also that point that you just made about the world we're living in now. It's a premise that's like universally understandable. Like, it's, in a way, it's like a super high concept office space. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's
like the universal like admission of like, hey, doesn't work fucking suck?
But it's not just that, but it's
an escape.
It's exactly, it's the idea that like we are in a hellscape and we're being inundated with like every day the Trump administration doing like the most insane dystopian bleak shit you've ever seen. But just for this set amount of time where you clock in and you do your little numbers. You can forget about all of that.
Yeah.
You don't have to think about it.
I'm just working on scary numbers, and for 8 hours a day, I don't got to think about life. And
that said, continuing that metaphor a bit, let's get into Helena, because we get to know Helena Egan a lot more. Helena.
Yeah.
We get to know Helena Egan a lot more this season. She's a stone cold psychopath.
Yeah.
It's absolutely nuts. You get toward the end of the season, you get a great picture as to why, when her dad is that absolute freak, Jamie Egan or whatever. So
great actor.
I see Keir in you.
I wish you'd take them wrong.
Oh, wow.
No. So
that's so crazy.
I do.
That line was nuts.
You're right about Helena being like a stone cold killer, but I do really love, and this is a little bit of a lore thing, but I do really love the Papa Egan. I don't remember which Egan he is, but Helena's dad coming,
James,
and him like preferring Helly to his
I don't
own
know
daughter.
what was up with that.
I think it's something because it's just like, yeah, no, she's like you, but like she really like she wants a kiss from daddy at the end of the day. Like she's doing all this because like, oh, like that's the best way to like get approval from Papa Egan. And like she's doing it for all the wrong reasons, where Helly's just like she's a fighter more than she is like a stone cold killer.
And she's horny.
Yeah.
So yeah, you get to that point with her, and that's a really interesting like way to that she ends up. But throughout the season, because you're wondering like how it's going to be treated. Is she a sympathetic character who just happens to be in this position of power? No, she's out of her fucking mind.
Right.
And it just becomes clearer and clearer. To the point that in the Orpo episode, it's
sinister. Yeah,
so,
she sleeps with him, right?
And I think it's not focused on quite enough. I mean, it is, the show gives it ample time, but like the gravity of that is insane. Like
it's a great scene.
When there's sex without informed consent is rape. Like she rapes Mark while basically raping herself. Like it is psychotic behavior, and it's because I think she kind of like her dad. I think she can see that like Innie her is way more human, and she envies that. She's
watching the like security cam footage of them kissing.
What Helly has. She has this sterile, weird fucking life. And yeah, she wants something more raw. She wants to take them raw, and It's so fascinating, and it's played out even more. She meets runs into Mark Scout outside at the Chinese place.
Great scene.
Incredible scene.
Love that scene.
Yeah, it's so great because you have no fucking clue what's going to happen, because they do have a rapport and they're flirting for a while. Until she forgets the name of his dead wife or whatever.
Oh, yeah. Forgets, quote unquote.
Very, very similar to Mark Scout then calling her Healy. Is that what he says? Her like it's kind of Helene. Like it's a very.
Are we about to get into the finale?
It's very similar. No, one moment one note on that scene to like that there is a definite craft behind this show, even where I think that there are missteps. A worse show would have drawn that out over like 3 or 4 episodes. And we've just been like, oh my God, they're going to have this whole thing that we at the audience are going to know, like, no, that's Helena Egan. That's your Helly, something like that. And like, they're just like, no, we're just going to have this one thing. And no, instead, like Mark is like, nah, there's something like weird going on. I'm going to go like get you to fucking pull this shit out of my brain now.
I mean, you shouted out the Mark and Mark meeting at the end, and to me, I mean, we can keep looping back on other episodes here, but to me, like this finale, starting with the Marks finally meeting,
it makes it all worth it. It makes you understand all the stupid table setting that they were doing.
It is a masterclass in everything. Acting, cinematography, editing, just all of it works.
You knew that it was teasing up to it too, and for it to actually work and be as effective as it is a credit.
It's incredibly sad.
We kept the amount of like previously on Severance where they have to keep being like, hey, remember that birthing center? We can also be severed there. Don't worry. Like every single episode, it felt like we had to be reminded of like, no, wait, there's another place where you can be,
I didn't get any of those because I was watching on the screener site. So yeah, but I actually did watch the finale on Apple Plus proper, and I saw that the primer there for that one, and I was like, oh yeah, okay. I feel like I'm primed
episode, here, dude. And it makes sense in the end, but like that also explains why Devin, without any explanation, keeps on going towards Cobell, because we need to get into that birthing center.
Yeah,
whether it makes sense or not, we gotta get there.
Yeah.
So once we get there, you're right. It's perfect delivery of the product of Severance. Like it is the concept is on full display. The level of craft possible is on display. The performance is on display, and crucially, it is emotionally really, really resonant. Like it all tracks.
They get along at first, and then they start friction.
It delivers everything that you want out of the show in this really tight package. It's absolute perfection. And it moves things forward because they're getting along, and then they're fucking not, and it makes sense. Like the way things end up going, a lot of people are saying and you could definitely make the argument of like I just don't get why any Mark would be like that. Why would he do that? And it's like because he's like a whole guy. He's like his own guy. He's being asked to kill himself.
Yeah. Well,
he's like, no, don't worry. Like nights and weekends, I'll come up here and like you can exist.
Well, it's not just that. I think it's also the idea of him getting to speak to the person who created him in a way, and being able to have this essentially live dialogue with his creator, and find out that like the dude doesn't really have any interest in his well-being and just wants something out of him.
Yeah.
Isn't really like there to hear, hey buddy, where are you at? Like, tell me what's going on. What do you care about? Who do you love?
Yeah.
What are your hobbies? Like, no, it's like, I have a very clear plan of how I want this to work out, and you're just a function of that plan. And Mark is Mark. Like, that's the thing, is like, this is a different personality, a different consciousness, but it's also the same person in a way. So of course they're going to budge.
Yeah. But Mark Scout still, even in that moment, does not see him as a real person. Like, he's still just like, no, you're like lesser. And I think that
hey buddy, I heard you like a girl.
Yeah.
Little office romance.
I think like that point exactly, not to like skip back over, because I know we can circle back to it, but like that is why I think that the very end of the episode does work, because he is choosing to continue living the only life that he knows. And that's all that like any of us can do, is just like, well, I don't know what else is out there, but if I walk out that door, I'm dead. So like, sure, I might as well just like try and run deeper into the maze, because then at least I'm alive and not dead.
Yeah. So the final episode, the logistics of this heist are so fucking awesome. It's so fun to watch. It's so complicated, and yet it's been laid out in a way that you understand what's going on, even though you're having to keep track of the fact that on every floor of this building, they are different people.
It's so cool. Every time they cross a different threshold. Yeah.
Yeah, exactly. The way that is utilized.
The first time that it's Mark really S with Miss Casey, and he's just like, just trust me and walk with me here. And she's like, what's going on?
What is occurring?
She's not even Miss Casey. She's just like a nothing. Like, that's, you know what I mean? That's like one of many.
Oh, the crib. Yeah,
it's one of many of these identities. And it's like the newest one. So she has no characteristics whatsoever except like build crib. And he's like, hey,
that's
he
Cold
looks
Harbor.
like fucking shit. He's like, hey, you want to come out?
Covered in blood and
So
shit.
cool. Well,
Yeah, and so it also has an emotional value to it because it speaks toward the sort of the theme of the show that there is carryover. Like your heart is your heart, and she trusts him even though no one on earth would trust a bloody guy who walks in and is trying to coach you.
right.
You know what I mean? So it works on that level.
In her defense, the other option was ominous voice that's like, stop. Continue dismantling the
not
crib.
a part of the plan.
Yeah, like that. So if those are your two options, I guess I would take another human being. So.
Let's back up for a second because there's two things I wanted to shout out. So first of all, the transition from the cabin to the severed floor, perfect cinema.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah.
Incredible moment where we just skip all of the bullshit of how we get there. It's just seamless. The very next thing I need to see is the severed floor. Boom, we're there. That is incredible.
Elevator doors open to Mark like as a messianic figure.
Oh,
with,
the painting
with like
love
a
it.
desktop
Love
in front of him. If I like showed up to work one day and I just saw that, I'd be like, I don't know about all that, guys. what we got going on here?
And then Cobell explaining the numbers, had to happen. Not my favorite sequence.
It's nonsense.
A little stupid.
Truly nonsense of like, it's, what did she say? It's malice and it's
the woes. It's all the all the tempers.
The four tempers.
Oh, so stupid. But
nothing.
whatever.
Absolutely
I honestly
nothing.
don't care. I guess that's fine. Like we had to do it. We had to tell all the Reddit heads that like this was all going to click together and just give them a little check.
Yeah, you see
check
43861. I'm like, ooh, that's fear.
Listen, it wasn't going to be fucking smart.
Yeah,
you know what I mean. Like, I think that idea was formulated with the aesthetic of it in mind by Dan Erickson. Yep. He was like, wouldn't it be cool if this guy's job is looking at numbers and like feeling something? You know what I mean? That's where that idea started. There's not a smart way to take that.
Yeah. It's a terrifying conceit that she has like 20 something.
24.
Yeah. You're just splitting the pie over and over into increasingly smaller and smaller slices. Like that's a really terrifying idea for a seemingly like uber powerful corporate entity to have the technology to do something like that.
Yeah. And
absolutely terrifying.
Her life is, essentially torture. Like she's just being led from room to room by what's her name, the comedian.
The lady, I don't know.
Yeah, who's very she's very funny in other stuff. She's a stand-up. But yeah, led from room to room to live through weird ass scenes thought up by Robbie Benson, who by the way, former teen heartthrob Robbie Benson.
That's the doctor.
Yeah.
Who's really just soaking it up, just like chewing the fucking scenery in these.
Sandra Bernhard, by the way.
Yes, thank you. So yeah, she her entire existence is torture, which by the way, I still think that she like volunteered for this in some capacity.
We didn't get a confirmation.
Yeah, we still don't really know.
But
I don't think she knew exactly what she was in for, but anyway, so she's like ready to fucking off herself. Like she's donezo with this. She fucking knocks she knocks Robbie out. She's like, go fuck yourself. And then and then we have some of this.
So my one question, I don't want to get to the weeds of like what is happening here and what Lumon's intentions are, but is the whole idea to basically like anything that you don't enjoy doing in life, you can just have like a severed entity do. Anytime you go to the dentist, like it'd be great if you just didn't have to feel anything when you went to the dentist. We can just make another guy and that guy will go to the dentist for you.
Yeah.
Yeah. It's like
anytime that you have to write thank you cards, like fuck that. That sucks. We'll just have somebody else do that.
Yeah, exactly. It's like I think they want it to be where like your business or like a room of your house or whatever can have like a severance, a ding, severance, doorway, like entryway, like your bathroom.
Every time you
take a poop, it's like, God damn it, I'm back here again.
That guy is just shitting
Yeah, but like, yeah, they want this to be a product where like, any doctor's office can be like, okay, so yeah, do you have the chip? All right, come this way. And then
Would you rather be the innie that's just shitting or the innie that's just pissing?
No, definitely the any that's pissing or the one that's shitting.
There's one for each.
Yeah.
You can't
The
do
one who's
both.
shitting is like, what does he keep eating? What's happening?
I think you gotta have that just be one innie. You gotta give him a little bit, like a little bit of switching.
It would just be one guy.
That would be really funny if Mark is like, my Audi had a lot of blueberries yesterday or something because that shit is green.
Yeah, there's one, but it's the way I differentiate is like one is a bathroom with a toilet, the other one has like a urinal or something. Like, is that the only difference that you're seeing here in these rooms that they're walking into?
Yeah, I guess. So
anyway, she's ready to scoot. Once he gets her out that doorway, they have a true emotional moment, like a real reunion, and it's in the middle of such chaos, but they do take that time.
Mm-hmm.
And I really enjoyed it. Also, right before that is the other, I think, key sequence of the episode and what makes this episode really special in terms of delivering premise. We haven't talked about Mr. Drummond. He's all over the season.
Yeah. Cool
the
guy.
goat is also in the scene right before this. Yeah, he rocks. Olafur Dari Olafsson, the most Scandinavian or Icelandic person of all time. He's kind of like a brute force character this season. He's replacing the guy that got killed, Grainer.
Oh, that's right. That's right. Yeah.
Yeah, in season 1. And
who Ragabi kills, right? Yeah.
Yeah.
I remember that.
Yes.
So we get goat sacrifice, but most importantly, we get an awesome fight sequence between Drummond and
Gwendolyn Christie,
and then between Drummond, Adam Scott, and Goat Lady.
Yeah.
Really compelling.
Brienne of Tarth.
Fun to watch. Good action. It feels like time is given to it. Like it is thoughtfully directed in a very, stillery way. Like he puts time in. So it's choreographed. They get into the elevator, and then once he severs as they're going down, he accidentally fucking shoots him in the fucking neck.
Incredible moment.
It's so smart. It's so funny and fucked up. It ruins everything. And then that also leads to another sort of ingenious moment of him using his blood in the tide in order to get into the room that his wife's in.
Good stuff. Real good
stuff.
Yeah,
which is just like it. That's like high IQ thinking.
I mean, this whole sequence really makes me feel like they did all the things they wanted to do in this space, in this environment, when it comes to how much can we ratchet up the stakes, right? Because season 1 was very much about mood and tone and vibe and eerie mystery. And then, like we said at the beginning, this season starts with how do we get them back into that setting? They managed to break out the epic season 1 finale of the overtime contingency. They resever outside, and then it's a big cliffhanger. And then it's like, okay, let's get them back in here. Everything that happens in this finale, all of this action, all of this blood and violence and intensity is a way of breaking free once and for all from the confines of here. And we'll get to a second in how like maybe that's not entirely the case, but the show as we knew it from the beginning is no more here. Like everything that's happening here, dudes getting like fucking blown their brains in the elevator. Like we're not going back to computer numbers in the computer.
So speaking toward the use of the space in this set, like that, Dane's gonna make fun of me because I always bring this up, but that's what I wanted more of this season. After doing all that work to get them back in here, we spend an awful lot of time out of here. And I get it. You need to develop the Audi world. You need to follow, we're meeting new characters that we need to follow. And but this space is like part of the original cell of the show. It's really interesting to look at and spend time in there in this endless maze of hallways, green carpet, for computer. Like it's excellent. And then in Chikai Bardo, we're introduced to a similar but different set of like angular white hallways that are lit from the bottom instead of the top. But you know, in season 1 during Defiant Jazz, we're introduced to the idea that they can fuck with the lighting in this building, and it really, really ratchets up whatever
marching band. Exactly.
Yeah.
It's so good. I was cheering. I was up from my seat, clapping.
Yeah. I did want to go back.
It's so stupid that it works.
That's kind of the like nonsensicalness to it all is like one thing that I wish that this season had more of. And that was one thing from the season finale that is all over the place. A lot of it is because Stiller is directing here. But I was like, fuck, where was this energy throughout the whole season? Backing up right before that, whenever Milchek takes Dylan to read the note that he gets from his Audi, and he's like, I'm going to read this. I'm going to leave now because I'm very busy. And he just turns around and just dead sprints away down the hallway. It's like those kind of little moments that I was like, fuck, this is great. Like, that's hilarious. This show needs to keep like its humor throughout all of the sci-fi weirdness that we have going on.
It just needs to keep being dynamic, because I agree that the humor is integral to the show, but also like Chikai Bardo is not funny, and it still works because it's dynamic. It's multiple things. Every episode of the show should be delivering on multiple levels when it has so much to work with. I know that's kind of a hard ask, but like, you introduced us to this fucking world, Dan. That's another thing that we need to be thinking about. Dan Erickson was an absolute nobody. He wrote this script and it immediately made waves in Hollywood. Like, people were bidding over it. Everyone wanted their hands on this fucking script. Stiller ends up with it. He doesn't have experience in like fleshing out shows like this. That said, he's a really interesting voice and like a good writer and very funny. And he's like a massive like Lost fan, and that shows.
So much Lost in here.
Yeah, that shows very much. It makes sense. So it's pieces of this are going to be sloppy, but where we end up rocks. We're
it's all worth it.
It's part of the like the stupidness of it is that like for like 10 minutes, like Helly actively has Milchek like locked in the bathroom while the marching band is playing, and like they're just playing right through it.
Yeah.
They don't give a fuck until like at a certain point one of them's like, wait a minute. What are you doing? That's
apparently
not,
I mean, they also put up signs that say Mark and just project them to the ceiling, not
to the camera,
not to Mark.
Us.
Not to like the guy who was there in the room with him.
That rocks. That's like
100%.
I don't think that they have like the most awareness in the world, is what I'm saying. I think that they're like, this is our job. We've been training for years for this moment.
But that's the show being like, no, this is like an artistic choice. This isn't a make sense choice, Yeah. And I think that's what we need a little bit more of.
Also, the Milchek dance moves. Like that's what incredible. I'm here for.
Yeah.
Just watching that boy move. Holy shit.
An character. He's very like theatrical. He loves to perform and dance. You know what I mean? Like, he's any chance he gets, he's gonna be doing some of that.
I mean, I just kept thinking about like this story from his point of view. Like, he's getting a bad performance review. He's on the outs, but he has this opportunity to be leading what they're calling like one of the greatest advancements in the history of humanity. He's going all out. He's going above and beyond. And that's what this is. That's what this marching band is he is thinking like this is genuinely a great thing to do for his employee who is completing an important project. Like that's what this is.
That's the fun thing to remember, is that like he's
a middle manager. You like at the end of the day,
he's a middle manager, and he's also like a weird guy.
And he loves Lumon.
His ideas are like bad a lot of the time. and generally, one thing I want to compliment, and one way to watch the show, if you're very critical of the show, I think it's important to remember that a lot of the shots being called that don't make logical sense are being called by people who are stupid and out of touch. Like they're not. That's I think
the board, quote unquote.
Toward like the corporate sort of like parallels here, like the extension of like corporate life and like how weird it is, the lingo, the sort of like the cultism of it. This Lumon is like a horribly run company. Like they're not omniscient, they're not smart, they're not managing their resources well at all. There's like no management happening in this fucking building. They're just powerful. And that's how a lot of companies are, especially old legacy companies. Like they just have power. They don't really know what they're fucking doing. And so like when something insane in the show happens, you have to remember that. It's like, like all of the religious parallel stuff that they're shoving down these innies' throats, that's because they think that it's compelling to these innies. And no one is stopping to be like, hey, this isn't connecting with these guys.
Yeah.
Like instead, they're still devoting so much budget into like creating artworks that they think are okay. This artwork is really gonna get marked.
The optics and design.
Yeah,
I mean, we'll probably
Mark Happy's here.
Well, we gave him a pineapple, so that shows our token of appreciation.
Yeah, exactly. It's absurdist, but there is like part of it is sort of like a joke of like, the company's fucking out of touch, like companies are.
Yeah.
So anyway, getting toward how the episode ends, there's marching band, big, obviously a parallel to Max Keeble's big move. The big climax with the marching band. We're not going to take it anymore. Helly basically says that. She stands up on a desk and she
does a Keeble. She pulls a Keeble. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I'm Max Keeble. We're not going to take it anymore.
If we had Ben Stiller on the pod, we would have to ask him that. Like,
hey, were you directly inspired by Max Keeble's big move?
Lost and Max Keeble's big move.
Yeah.
So our boy's faced with a choice. It's all been paid off. The journey has been completed, even though it's complicated. And she's Miss Casey now on this floor, but they get her out. They get her to the door. She gets out
to the stairwell.
Door, she knows who she is again. Incredible place to end the season. Just like whatever choice they decided for him to make, that is such an awesome stakes setter. And I think ultimately they went the right way.
Shout out to the needle drop here. You brought up the music throughout the season. I think the song is called Windmills of Your Mind. There was another really great the episode ending needle drops were consistently really, really compelling. There was a The Who song. I think it's the one where he starts the reintegration, the bam 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 bam. I think that's the Who. So this is Windmills of Your Mind by Michael Legrand from the original Thomas Crown Affair 1968, Noel Harrison. So I'd never heard this song before. Apparently it's a very well-known song, I guess, from that 68 film. But the vibe that it puts you in as it brings the season to a close, as Mark decides to stay.
Yeah.
Wow.
And I mean, the imagery of it all, which Ben Stiller talked about, and just the freeze frame-ification, like what are some of the big like callbacks that it's trying to do. Ben Stiller specifically mentioned The Graduate, which I think is very apt in that whole thing of like, we're running away from the chapel. Like,
what did we just do?
All right, we did it. We had this moment.
Now what?
Yeah. And I think that is kind of the moment that we are left with a little bit of like, all right, cool. Like Mark and Helly are together. What does that even mean in this world? Are they just gonna like live in this office building together
with the goats?
Like how's that gonna play out?
They're in the yeah. It's just he made it wasn't just because the way it's obviously framed and set up is like it's Helly versus Gemma, and that's not entirely it. It's like there a revolution is very clearly happening in the other room, and he's like, should I just like kind of bail
Step
on that?
out.
Yeah.
Like right as it's
So I just get out and like make sure that I definitely die because we shut Lumon the fuck down.
Maybe be back in some birthing cabin.
Yeah. I will say, I forgot to mention it earlier. Mark Scout, the worst pitcher of reintegration that I've ever heard in my life. Like you definitely could have like bullshitted your way through that. No, we're actually like kind of the same guy now. Like you will take over my body just as much as I'm going to take over yours. Like we're the same guy.
It's terrible. He did such a bad job.
Terrible pitching job.
I literally just say no. We'll be the same guy. It's no sharing.
The worst recruiter I've ever heard in my life.
Yeah.
I did want to say, or like not to get too deep into the theories of like what's next of this, but one thing that I have seen and read post-season ending is the theory that this is like actually deep down what the Egan's always wanted. The Egan's actually weren't as interested in like what happens. They wanted to see what would happen like if a revolution
James' reaction does not lend. He's screaming. He's like, "Fuck no!" And then the scientist guy is also freaking out. Which,
I think that the reason for that is they're like, well, that's the only reason why we can't explain why there's one security guard that's employed at any given time in Lumon Corporation. Like, that's it.
Yeah. There's a lot of stuff you can't explain. I mean, you could chalk it up to what you were saying about like just the incompetence of corporations and how
and
the arrogance of it all.
Yeah.
Well, and especially like we don't even know like what the board is like or if they exist. So if the board is like telling Natalie like, only have one person overseeing all this shit. You know what I mean? That might be AI. Like we don't really know.
No, I don't necessarily like ascribe to that take, but I wanted to mention I think it's more than likely that they are like a weird, even if it's like the most boring answer, that they are just like disconnected corporate overlords with some kind of a god complex, and that's why they're like sacrifice a goat first before you come to us.
The goat stuff that's all just like bullshit for the Severance floor to have some kind of deity like god
that's exactly
complex.
That is what that's for.
I think the bigger question is like, you know, what does James want out of this? Because what does the Egan line want out of this? Because we didn't really get a clear answer out of that. They keep talking about the revolving. We don't know what the fucking revolving is. The biggest guess is that it has something to do with the confirmation that Severance as a procedure has reached enough of a refined technological level that it can now be implanted into James Egan. Like he basically didn't want to put the chip in his head until he knew that it could do exactly what he wanted it to do. And then Cold Harbor would prove that you can't. The whole thing with Cold Harbor is she's dismantling her own crib that her baby that she miscarried would be in, and that she felt nothing, and that she had no emotion in the process of dismantling the crib, which I guess would lead to believe that Severance could get to a point where you could implant a fresh, a totally fresh, unfiltered
you could basically
consciousness.
Erase memories
right
at that point. Yeah.
So theoretically, I guess my best guess is that they would resurrect Kier. That's kind of what the big theory is that James Egan would become Kier, and that maybe the board is already Kier, that they have this like animatronic of Kier that Milchick interacts with. And
That's like got jokes.
We don't know is that someone speaking into a microphone from another room, or is that actually some kind of AI resurrected consciousness?
I think that was like just kind of for the bit. Like, I don't think that particular guy is going to play into anything, but the idea of it, I think like the Kier resurrection thing, I think is absolutely on point. Like, I fully believe that. And it makes sense, like, to explore the idea of, okay, if we have the ability to fully exclude who she is by using this chip, then
We
that
could
also
plug
means
in.
we have the ability to encapsulate all that she is into the chip.
Right.
Yeah.
So, you know what I mean? And then you can then you have the ability to just like switch brains.
Exactly.
Yeah. I
Yeah.
think, and that was kind of another thing that like I almost took it as, how can we go one step closer or one step different from something like Click, the 2006 film Click.
Also,
which is-
Christopher Walken.
Hey, there you go. Which is just about like, how can I not experience the bad parts of life and just
Fast
like
forward.
skip on past
Yeah.
them? But like, how can I become a different person? Like almost closer to something like Minority Report, whenever they go into the tubes and they just like live a different life.
And he like folds his face in with the thing he's.
I was thinking of the guy who goes into the tube just so he can be like praised by people. Remember?
Oh, the
guy?
hacker. The hacker.
Yeah, that
yeah.
guy. Of like almost like that version of like, how can we just like alter lives to the point that like we are blurring the lines of who the real us is
Yeah.
at this point. We
It's
are
also-
the real us that we choose to have, like whatever
also
moments we
the,
choose to experience or not experience.
You can explore too, and they have kind of like with the entire conceit of the show, but you can explore the idea of a Westworldy type thing where like if you're able to just fully sever these people, like our boy Dr. Mauer is already kind of doing this. Like you can torture them for your own pleasure.
Ugh.
Like you can do awful things
Yeah.
to them and they will not know.
Yeah.
So this is all a prequel
I mean,
to Westworld, is what you're saying.
I don't want the show to get to this point. I would love for season 3 to be laser focused on our characters, but I am curious if they do choose to go that route of showing what the larger implications are. What larger goal would a company like Lumon have for Severance? Because they've planted these seeds, right? They are a pharmaceutical company. They've already tiptoed outside of the building to these birthing cabins. They are starting to position themselves in a more consumerist mindset with everything that's going on with Cole Harbor and Gemma.
And
what is the end result of that? Is that a way in which they implant this chip into everybody, and so now everybody is a Lumon drone and they just don't know because they're severed? They have no memory.
Exactly. Like the implications are complete. Like the possibilities are fully endless. And I think, like the personal pleasure of torture thing is going to come into play because like if you're selling this tech, like you would sell it to like a human trafficker. You know what I mean? Or someone who wants to have like, someone who wants to have like a wife or something against their will. Like,
God,
jeez.
Yeah, because this is like a very, very patriarchal
fucked up.
company.
Yeah.
That all tracks with their weird like 1800s mindset.
Which we're led to believe that maybe he has done that. There's that little bit of the birthing cabins.
Yeah, exactly. So this is why I'm so excited by the finale and interested in season 3 is because they answered some questions, but we can go anywhere from here because also the innies are about to like blow up the fucking building from the
Right.
inside.
They have trombones.
Well, it's also we can spend as much time as they want to in season 3 with the premise of the innies are holding their bodies hostage in there.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Like they know that if they don't leave, like they get to still be themselves. So they're like, hey, we'll kill ourselves if you don't like meet our demands.
Also, Helena Egan, like that's not no one.
And to that point, like I almost wonder how much of season 3, if not all of it, are we going to go without ever seeing Audi Mark? Will we only be any Mark? Because I almost wonder if the actress who plays Gemma, like she might really have a huge season 3 coming up because she might essentially be the
Lockman. I believe.
Yes, that's it. Perfect. She might be the one who is now partnering up with Devin of like, oh my God, now we have to save Mark from that place.
I mean that's it has to be that. Yeah.
Yeah, that's exactly.
I will say, I was very, and Leah's on board with me with this. I was very unsure that a woman as beautiful as Miss Lockman would be with a man
Deachin,
who looks
by the way.
like, how do you say it?
Deachin Lockman.
Deachin Lockman.
Who would be
How
with
she
someone
would be with Adam Scott.
who looks like Adam Scott. And then Chikai Bardo happened. And boy gets a different haircut.
Mhm.
Boy gets a little beard grown in.
Listen.
And I was like, okay, I see it.
Here's the thing.
Well,
I see
also,
the
like,
Here's the
vision.
thing. Any Mark? Nah. Audi Mark? Hey, he's just sad enough that like, yeah, I can see it now. All right.
Also, it's not that is like art, and like people get upset at that all the time. That's just art, like imitating life.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? like 99% of guys are hideous creatures. We're all fucking gnomes. You know what I mean? Like that also really upsets me. I hate it that, and I used to do this too. People being so hung up on like how on earth are Rickon and Devin together, when it's like, have you met like half of all couples? No, they don't make any sense. Half of all married like straight couples have zero things in common.
And here's the
They
thing.
just ended up together.
Here's the thing, and we're all saying, yes, Rickon's too good for her. Like, we all know that. Like, when you got a man with that much risk, who is like the best-selling author on the severed floor of Lumon, you just, you know,
Michael
aim higher.
Chernus. We needed a little bit more from him. What about
is he doing here?
John Noble? We haven't brought up as Walken's husband.
Yeah, he's a really good episode on there.
Fields.
That's I mean, again, going to like your favorite episode, that's a very lovely dinner sequence that we have there.
Loved it. So sinister, just tiptoeing into the darkness.
It is sinister, but there's something that's like, it almost feels like a trap. Everything that he says towards his husband, like, I actually think it's great for Sever to feel love. Don't you agree? Like, waiting for him to say like, yeah, definitely, and be like, the fuck, why do you agree with that? It felt like a very much a real relationship.
Yeah.
that I loved.
I love the Walken stuff in here. He doesn't get a ton to do, but the bits that we do get, I thought that it was all great.
I want
Audi
more from
Burr.
him.
Audi Burr is evil as fuck.
Yeah, I
love to see it.
I did want more from him after season 1 because, you know, he just gets more to do in season 1, but I did really like that. Speaking of something that is a weird Lumonism that isn't explained.
Miss Wong.
Yeah, Miss Wong.
Yeah, what's up with that?
Employing like a 10-year-old
What's
child.
up with Miss Wong?
That rocks. I mean, it plays it plays into, again, like the 1800s mindset, ether mine nature of the company of like employing small children. And this is like the corporatized version of that. Is
just needed more.
It's like an opportunity internship program. I got it. I enjoyed it, and I really like Miss Wong. I thought her performance was great. I
love her. I feel like there's an opportunity in there to meld that plot line with the Cobell episode, because clearly that's what she was doing. You know, is that sort of child labor.
Maybe we'll get to see her at the empathy retreat or wherever it is.
I'm gonna go ahead and probably say no.
I know. I think I said
might be it for that.
Like,
for that child.
If this was like 2013, there would 100% be webisodes of her at the empathy center.
They just got. They had to get her out.
Her like breaking out from her pocket like shards of glass of her toy to like rebuild it again.
She's gonna be 24 by the time Severance comes back. Little Miss Wong. Any other stray thoughts? Anything else we've missed? Any characters, plot lines?
Given everything that we've said about like, you know, the people who are making this and like what's been going on behind the scenes, I'm really happy with how this turned out. I think it's a showcase piece for all pieces of production, cast and crew, even if it's uneven at times. Like, it's very enjoyable for that reason.
Yeah,
it feels like an achievement, even though it's spotty.
I agree with all of that. I think that this is one of the things, and I've been like trying to be hesitant to not come across too critical throughout this episode, because I'm critical because like I care so much, because I can see the potential.
It's a good one.
I can see the potential of this show being like up there on that top echelon of shows that we talk about. And it is in that mode in points, and it also has things that detract from it, so it makes me more hypercritical. I will say we are at a bit of an impasse here because we talked about a little bit up at the top, but there's pretty much like a mass turnover that is happening from season 2 to season 3.
Writer's room.
And it can really go either way. Dan Erickson is not the showrunner anymore. Dan Erickson is like pretty much pulling away. Ben Stiller is pretty much becoming the full-time showrunner.
No. So Dan Erickson is. I didn't think it was his role that was changing. There were multiple people who were kind of given the title of showrunner informally, who were not Dan or Ben Stiller, and it's like, okay, so what are you doing then? And so they're bringing in new quote unquote, I think, showrunners, and then complete writing staff turnover,
including Sean Clements.
Yeah, it's Ben Stiller bringing in a bunch of like his guys, including our boy Sean Clements from Hollywood Handbook.
Let's go.
Whoa. Pound for pound, probably the person who's made me laugh the most in my whole life from like 10 years of podcasts. He's so fucking funny. He's never really worked on anything very good.
Kevin
can fuck himself.
Kevin can flurp himself.
Okay.
Excuse me.
Well, also, I mean, he's brilliant. You know what I mean? It's not necessarily his fault. It's just like, this is just a
that's
big
life as a comedy writer. Yeah.
I guess he's buddies.
Happen on a successful show.
Yeah.
He's buddies with Zach Cherry. Because Zach Cherry was on Hollywood Handbook recently.
He's been on a couple of times.
I guess they're buds.
Yeah.
They're boys. It's just, I mean, if you listen to Stiller on that podcast, like so many of the people that he brought in either to act or like make the show are just people he knew from his other stuff, which is that's how it works. You know what I mean? If you're a creator, but like Olaf, whatever, is from Walter Mitty, you know what I mean? And there are a lot of people behind the scenes that are from his other shit. So this is just him being like, okay, I'm in charge now. It's going to be all my people. So
and he's got that Apple paycheck behind him, which if they're willing to continue doing it, I'm here for it. I mean, when we were sitting here doing the Severance season 1 pod 3 years ago or whenever it was, we were very unsure about season 2. But I think I remember us saying that the potential was there for it to be even better. I think there's enough here that you could make the argument that it was. I think there's a lot of low lows, but doing the season 1 rewatch in tandem with season 2, it's not like season 1 is this perfect diamond either.
No, it's not.
No.
And it's just more contained. Season 2 is harder than season 1.
Yeah, it's true.
And so I am really interested also because Stiller's creative process is very, very demanding and exacting, and like he doesn't compromise when he makes stuff and when he directs. And so, you know, the result is like really, really lengthy shoots for things like the opening hallway running sequence.
Yeah, months.
So the upside is that that's fucking incredible. The downside is that I'm sure like the other showrunners or the network would be like, hey, why are you spending 3 weeks on like 5 minutes of show? That's crazy. But it's worth it from our end. It just makes it, so things like crazy, insane amounts of turnover happen and like a lot of use of budget for a streaming service that's losing a lot of money. So things are going to be kind of up in the air. But then you get things like Orpo where like he's like, no, we're shooting on fucking location.
Yeah,
it looks great.
We're going to bring a little office set out there too for the dream sequence. It's all going to be real, and I love that. Yeah, it's all worth it.
I'm really glad this show exists on Apple because Apple just kind of has an unlimited budget for a lot of their shows, whether they're successful or not. Now, will that same mindset hold in 3 years when we get season 3? TBD. Tim Cook might just be like, wait, we're eating how much money every single year on this service and pull the fucking plug on this. But until he does, like, I'm going to keep enjoying that we're seeing something that has this much thought behind it and this much craft get the budget that it deserves.
Yeah. So looking forward to season 4 on Quibi.
Yeah.
No, Pluto.
No, I was thinking Yahoo Stream.
Yeah. Roku channel. Severance on Roku.
Yeah.
It could hit.
It's going
All
to
right.
CISO.
We can wrap it up there. Thank you all for listening. We got a lot of new listeners for our Terminator 2 podcast. So if you got served this video after the T2 review, why don't you hit that subscribe? Why don't you hit that like? Why don't you leave us a comment down below and let us know all the things we got wrong in this episode, all the things you disagree with. Are we shills? Are we loser innies?
I don't think people will think we're shills. I think people might think that we might be hypercritical because this show is like a hyper fan.
Let us know
online. So
let us know.
Yell at us.
I think everyone's going to think that we're fair and smart.
Call me
Good.
a nerd who just doesn't fucking get it. No, say that I'm not a nerd enough. Say I'm not a fan.
Yes. Hey, we watch all 5.5 hours of that Marvel chair stream? Who knows? Listen to our other catch-up episode to
I
find
don't
out.
know.
Unfortunately, we should tell the audience that's why Drew isn't here right now. Drew was setting up the chairs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I
Drew was setting up the chairs.
genuinely, I'm so grateful that I actually don't know what you're talking about. And I don't intend to.
I found out like about an hour and a half ago when we did the last pod.
Yeah, I'm good.
Rate, review, and subscribe, like, and comment. Check out WeBoughtAMic.net. Get every episode in your email inbox. Join the Discord, patreon.com/WeBoughtAMic. Thank you, beautiful donors. Next week, I think might take the week off now that I think about it, because we are seeing Fred Armisen live.
You're right. Well,
The day that we
it's
usually
one of
record.
our podcasters' birthdays.
It's my birthday.
It's birthday boy.
Yeah.
And what are Drew and I going to produce a podcast? I don't know how to do
We're
that.
all seeing Fred Armisen live in concert.
Yeah.
Comedy music show. So we probably won't do an episode, but the week after, stay tuned. Our You Pick series continues. Stay tuned for Catch Up. Stay tuned for Sinners. Also, Hunter is doing about 4 hours on Minecraft exclusive.
Yeah.
So stick around for that.
I'm going to do a live podcast from the screener. I'm going to clear it with the studio before.
Yeah.
I'm just going to like talk at full volume.
And you're just going to be chopping trees the whole time.
Yeah. I'll be like, I'm actually Steve.
Until then, keep Emil the goat alive and well. And we love you. Bye-bye.
Bye.